Imagine hitting the hardwood floor of a university stage while 2,000 people watch your body shut down. You hear the microphone screech. You feel the cold wood against your cheek. Your internal organs are failing from severe sepsis. The university officials are frantically dialing your emergency contacts. They leave urgent voicemails stating you are in an ambulance fighting for your life. 3 days later, you wake up in a trauma center. You look at your phone. Your parents did not rush to your bedside. They boarded a first-class flight to California. Your brother tagged them in a photo sitting on a sunlit patio at Montage Laguna Beach, holding expensive cocktails. The caption reads, "Finally a family trip, no stress, no drama." They viewed your medical emergency as an inconvenience they needed a vacation from. My name is Ariana Foster. I am 24 years old and I am a financial auditor. 3 years ago, my parents abandoned me in an Illinois intensive care unit. They thought I would lay in that hospital bed and cry. They thought I would beg for their attention. Instead, I embraced a cold clinical detachment and initiated a legal strike that stripped them of everything they owned. Before I explain exactly how I dismantled my own family, please drop a comment and tell me what city you are listening from. Hit the subscribe button if you believe blood does not excuse betrayal. Now let me take you back to the morning my life shattered. It is a Saturday in May. The air inside the university auditorium smells of hairspray and nervous sweat. I am standing behind the heavy velvet curtains wearing a stiff polyester graduation gown. I spent the last 4 years working 80-hour weeks at a downtown Chicago accounting firm. I paid my own tuition. I studied until my eyes burned. This degree in financial auditing is my ticket to independence. I pull my phone from my pocket. I sent my mother Susan a picture of my cap and tassel at 6 o'clock this morning. The delivery receipt shows the message was read. There is no reply. I peek through the gap in the curtains. I reserved 3 premium seats in the 3rd row, right on the center aisle. Those seats remain empty. Families are holding grocery store bouquets and taking photographs. My designated row is a blank space in a crowded room. I tell myself they are just stuck in Illinois traffic. I try to ignore the tightening knot in my stomach. I also try to ignore the sharp burning ache spreading across my lower abdomen. I assume it is just anxiety. I assume the stress of the week is finally catching up with me. The dean steps up to the wooden podium. The ceremony begins. As the names are read in alphabetical order, the pain in my stomach shifts. It morphs from a dull ache into a searing knife. I begin to sweat through the dark fabric of my gown. The lights overhead feel blindingly hot. The dean calls my name, Ariana Foster. I step out from the shadows of the curtain. I force myself to walk toward the center of the stage. Every step sends a jarring wave of agony up my spine. I reach out my right hand to take the leather diploma cover. My fingers brush the textured material. Something inside my body ruptures. The stage lights flare bright white. The sound of polite applause warps into a high-pitched ring. My knees buckle. I hit the hardwood floor. A woman screams. The world turns dark. I surface from the dark slowly. The first sensation is the bitter chill of the room. My throat is raw. My lips are cracked and dry. I open my eyes to a blinding white ceiling and the rhythmic hum of medical machinery. The room smells of bleach and iodine. I am lying in the intensive care unit. Thick plastic tubes connect my arms to hanging bags of fluid. I turn my head against the stiff pillow. I expect to see my mother pacing the floor. I expect to see my father David cornering a doctor demanding answers. I expect my older brother Liam to be sitting in the corner scrolling through his phone. The chairs beside my bed hold only one person. My grandfather Elias sits near the window. He is 80 years old. He wears a pressed wool suit and rests his hands on a heavy wooden cane. Elias does not weep. He does not offer hollow sympathies. He watches the door with a hard, unreadable expression. He hears the rustle of my sheets and turns his head. He stands up slowly and pours a small plastic cup of water. He holds a straw to my lips. I take a sip. The cold water feels like a lifeline. I look around the empty room. I ask him where they are. My voice is a broken rasp. Elias does not sugarcoat the truth. He reaches into his suit pocket and pulls out my smartphone. The glass screen is shattered across the top corner from when I dropped it on the auditorium stage. He places the heavy device into my palm. He tells me to look for myself. My fingers are stiff and wrapped in medical tape. I press the side button. The screen illuminates the dim hospital room. The phone opens directly to an internet notification. It is a social media post from my older brother Liam. I stare at the image. My brain struggles to process the vibrant colors against the sterile backdrop of my reality. The photograph shows Liam, Susan, and David sitting at a beachfront restaurant. The sky behind them is a flawless tropical blue. Palm trees frame the edges of the picture. They are holding up frosted glasses garnished with lime wedges. Susan is wearing a new pair of designer sunglasses. David is wearing a linen shirt I have never seen before. Liam is in the center, leaning forward with a wide, practiced smile. I read the caption beneath the photo. Finally, a family trip to Montage Laguna Beach. No stress, no drama. The words land like physical blows. I check the timestamp. The photo was posted on Saturday morning. I run the logistical arithmetic in my head. Chicago to Southern California requires a 4-hour flight. To be sitting on a patio in Laguna Beach with fresh drinks means they boarded a plane early Saturday morning. They were walking through airport security while I was standing in my polyester gown, waiting for them to arrive. They were ordering their first round of cocktails while a trauma surgeon was cutting into my stomach to clear a deadly infection. This was not a scheduling error. This was a premeditated abandonment. They packed summer clothes, hid their luggage, and lied straight to my face. My mother read my text message on graduation morning, knowing she was sitting at her departure gate. I close the social media application. The home screen appears. A red notification bubble hovers over my phone icon. I have 135 missed calls. The call log scrolls endlessly, showing my father's name. David, David, David. The timestamps tell a bizarre story. The calls did not start on Saturday when the hospital was frantically leaving voicemails about my critical condition. They ignored those. The avalanche of calls started a mere 12 hours ago, long after they had settled into their luxury resort. I back out of the call log and open my text messages. There are 0 messages asking if I am safe. There is only one recent text from David. We need you. Answer now. I stare at the screen. He does not ask if I am alive. He issues a command. As an auditor, I am trained to look for discrepancies. My mind analyzes the cold facts of my family dynamic. They only reach out when Liam accumulates a debt they cannot hide. They only call when they need me to fix a crisis. I lower the phone to my chest. I look at my grandfather. Elias rests his hands on his wooden cane. His face hardens into a mask of grim satisfaction. He tells me they are not calling out of grief. He explains they are calling because a very specific legal deadline passed while they were sitting on that beach. David is not dialing my number because he misses his daughter. He is dialing my number in a state of pure financial terror. I look at the dark screen of my phone resting against the thin hospital blanket. The sheer volume of the missed calls creates a heavy silence in the room. I turn my head toward Elias. He sits in the plastic visitor chair watching me process the numbers. I ask him to explain the deadline. My voice is weak, but the confusion demands an answer. Elias rests his chin on his folded hands. He tells me I need to understand the architecture of my own family history. He begins to speak about my late grandmother, Clara. Clara was a woman who built an empire in the Chicago real estate market during the early 1990s. She purchased commercial properties near the Magnificent Mile when the interest rates were favorable and held them with unyielding discipline. She possessed a sharp analytical mind. She also possessed a clear view of her own son. Clara knew David was reckless. She watched him chase trend after trend, trying to project an image of effortless success while drowning in silent debt. More importantly, Clara watched how David and Susan raised their children. She saw them pour every available resource into my older brother Liam. She noticed how they treated me as an afterthought. When I sat at the kitchen table finishing my accounting homework, Susan would tell me to turn the lights off to save electricity. The next day, she would finance a luxury vehicle for Liam because he complained about riding the train. Clara witnessed this profound disparity and decided to construct a legal fortress to protect my future. Elias explains the mechanism Clara deployed before her heart failed 5 years ago. She took 3 prime commercial office buildings in downtown Chicago and placed them into an irrevocable blind trust. The legal structure was a masterpiece of asset protection. She listed David as the temporary managing custodian. This title meant David received the quarterly performance statements. He could look at the ledger and see the rental revenue accumulating in an escrow account. He could watch the equity grow. But the blind trust restricted him from taking any action. He was legally barred from liquidating the properties. He could not use the buildings as collateral for a loan. He could not siphon the rental income to pay his own creditors. He was forced to stare at a fortune he was forbidden to touch. There was only one trigger built into the document. The trust was designed to vest entirely and exclusively to me the exact moment I turned 24 years old. I lie in the hospital bed and do the mental math. I am a financial auditor. I live by dates and ledgers. My 24th birthday was last Friday. It was the day before my graduation ceremony. It was the day before my internal organs began to shut down from the infection. Elias watches the realization settle over my face. He details the current financial reality of my parents. Liam recently attempted to launch a boutique logistics firm. He leased premium office space in the West Loop, purchased ergonomic furniture, and hired 2 personal assistants. The company operated for 8 months and generated 0 profit. When the commercial eviction notices arrived, David and Susan scrambled to save his ego. They drained their retirement accounts. They took out high-interest loans against their own home. They dug a trench of debt so deep they were weeks away from total bankruptcy. They needed the Chicago real estate portfolio to survive. They knew the vesting date was Friday. Their strategy for my graduation weekend was a calculated ambush. They intended to attend the ceremony and play the role of proud parents. They planned to take me to an upscale dinner. Before the dessert arrived, David was going to slide a quitclaim deed across the white tablecloth. They were going to leverage my lifelong desperation for their approval. They would frame the signature as a necessary sacrifice to keep the family unit intact. They assumed I was a compliant people-pleaser. They believed my inherent weakness would guarantee their financial salvation. I ask Elias why they did not follow through with the dinner. I ask why they boarded a flight to Laguna Beach instead. Elias lets out a dry, humorless laugh. He says arrogance is a blinding condition. Susan and David felt untouchable. Liam wanted to celebrate an anniversary with his new girlfriend in California and demanded a family trip. My parents evaluated the schedule and decided I was so submissive I could wait. They assumed they could enjoy a weekend by the ocean and coerce my signature on Monday morning upon their return. They thought the legal transfer was a slow administrative process they could easily interrupt. They severely underestimated the efficiency of the estate attorney Clara hired. Mr. Barrett is a senior partner at a firm specializing in high net worth execution. He does not delay his duties. On Friday at midnight, the trust officially vested. On Saturday morning, while my parents were ordering drinks by the Pacific Ocean, Mr. Barrett initiated the automated transfer protocols. He sent a certified digital notice directly to the inbox of my father. The notification informed David that his custodial rights were permanently revoked. His access credentials to the escrow accounts were terminated. The commercial buildings and the accumulated revenue became my sole unencumbered property. David checked his phone on the patio of the luxury resort. He read the legal notice. He realized the fortune he planned to steal had just slipped through his fingers. He panicked. The 135 missed calls were born from a desperate need to reach me before I opened my own mail. He needed to manipulate me over the phone before I understood the scale of my new wealth. The silence in the intensive care unit stretches. The rhythmic hum of the ventilator provides a steady beat to the thoughts racing through my mind. I process the cold, hard truth of my existence within the Foster family. For 2 decades, I shrank myself to make them comfortable. I hid my academic awards in the back of my closet so Liam would not feel insecure about his failing grades. I worked double shifts at the accounting firm to pay my rent, never asking them for a single dollar. I believed that if I demonstrated enough competence, they would eventually grant me a seat at their table. I thought my grit would earn their love. The image of the tropical vacation photograph burns in my memory. They did not just ignore my graduation, they left me to die. They measured my worth against the convenience of a beach trip and I lost. They never saw a daughter. They only saw a disposable financial utility. I was an insurance policy they intended to cash out. The physical pain of the surgical staples in my abdomen is severe, but the psychological agony of the betrayal burns it away. I wait for the tears to fall. I wait for the crushing wave of sorrow that usually accompanies heartbreak. The tears do not come. The urge to seek their validation dies in the sterile air of the hospital room. It is replaced by a sensation I have never felt before. It is a profound, freezing clarity. As an auditor, I am trained to evaluate bankrupt entities. I look at the history of my family and recognize a toxic, insolvent structure. I decide in this moment to cut the losses. I drop the identity of the compliant sister. I embrace a cold clinical detachment. The trauma bond severs with a clean snap. I look at my grandfather. My voice no longer wavers. I ask him what our next move is. Elias leans forward, resting his weight on the wooden cane. The grim satisfaction on his face deepens into a sharp, tactical focus. He tells me the missed calls on my phone stopped 3 hours ago. He explains that David realized I was not answering the device. David began calling my landlord and then contacted the university administration. Elias tells me my father knows about the collapse on stage. He knows I am currently lying in the intensive care unit. He knows my body is weakened by sepsis and my mind is recovering from heavy sedation. I feel a chill radiate down my spine. I ask Elias why the calls stopped if David knows I am hospitalized. Elias looks toward the heavy wooden door of my room. He informs me that David and Susan are on a flight back to Chicago right now. They are not rushing home to hold my hand. They realize they cannot trick me into signing a quitclaim deed over a casual dinner anymore. The legal landscape shifted and they are pivoting their strategy. Elias warns me that my father is bringing a lawyer directly to the medical campus. They intend to use my severe illness as a weapon to strip away my bodily autonomy before I am strong enough to stand. I lie in the sterile hospital bed and watch the digital clock on the wall shift to a new minute. The red numbers glare in the dim light. My father is currently sitting on a commercial flight racing back to Illinois. He is not crossing the country to hold my hand or ask the doctors about my recovery. He is rushing back to trap me. The air in the intensive care unit feels heavy, but my mind operates with a sudden, frightening clarity. I am processing the impending legal threat while the intravenous antibiotics pump through my veins. To understand why David believes he can simply walk into this hospital and strip away my bodily autonomy, you must understand the environment I grew up in. Psychologists use the term glass child to describe a sibling who becomes transparent in a household dominated by another demanding presence. Being a glass child does not just mean you are ignored. It means your existence is treated as a convenient blank canvas for the parents to project their own needs upon while they cater to the golden child. In the foster household, Liam was the sun, and I was merely a shadow expected to absorb the excess heat. The contrast between our lives was a masterclass in financial and emotional manipulation. 3 years ago, Liam failed out of his prestigious business school. He skipped his final exams to attend music festivals and partied away his tuition. David and Susan did not reprimand him. They did not demand he find employment. Instead, Susan claimed the academic pressure was detrimental to his mental health. My parents purchased a luxury condominium in Oak Brook just to give Liam a fresh start. They handed him the keys to a modern loft with floor-to-ceiling windows while he contributed nothing to society. During that same semester, I earned the highest academic honors in my university auditing program. I brought the official university letter home and placed it on the kitchen counter. Susan walked into the room, picked up the heavy cardstock, and frowned. She did not offer a single word of praise. She told me to put the paper away because seeing my success would make Liam feel inadequate about his recent withdrawal. She slid my achievement into a dark drawer, ensuring my competence would never cast a shadow over his fragility. I learned very early that my survival depended entirely on my own grit. I could not rely on the bank of David and Susan. I secured a grueling internship at a corporate accounting firm in downtown Chicago. I worked double shifts organizing financial ledgers and fetching coffee for senior partners until my feet bled. I routed every paycheck into a high-yield savings account. I built an immaculate credit score line by line, operating in total silence. While I financed my own existence, David was busy remortgaging his life to fund the delusions of Liam. My brother decided he wanted to be a technology entrepreneur. He lacked a business plan and possessed zero coding experience, but Susan convinced David to take out a second mortgage on their house to provide the seed capital. Liam burned through the funds in 6 months, renting expensive server space and hosting lavish launch parties for an application that never actually functioned. My parents absorbed the crushing debt without a single complaint, treating the failure as a minor stepping stone on his path to inevitable genius. They poured their affection and their equity into a leaking bucket. They expected me to stand quietly by the sidelines, generating my own resources so I could eventually serve as their ultimate safety net. Lying in the trauma center, the memory of those hidden academic awards and grueling double shifts aligns perfectly with the photograph of the Laguna Beach cocktails. The puzzle pieces snap together, forming a grotesque picture of my family dynamic. They left me to die of sepsis because my pain was an inconvenience to their leisure. They are returning now only because my newly vested real estate portfolio is the cure to their self-inflicted bankruptcy. The realization acts as a chemical solvent. It dissolves the final lingering threads of my trauma bond. Society teaches us to forgive our parents and absorb their flaws to maintain the family unit. But forgiveness implies an eventual return to mutual respect. You cannot respect a parasite that views your existence solely as a financial host. I feel the residual guilt evaporate. The need to be the good daughter dies in the sterile air of the hospital room. I turn my head toward Elias. He is watching me closely, observing the shift in my posture. I do not ask him for permission. I tell him we are going to lock the doors before the wolves arrive. I press the red call button attached to my bed rail. A minute later, the charge nurse walks into the room. She is a veteran medical professional with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She checks the monitors displaying my vital signs and asks what I need. I keep my voice level and strip away any emotional inflection. I tell the nurse that my estranged parents are currently en route to the hospital. I explain that they are not welcome in my room. I state that they are attempting to execute a hostile financial takeover and pose a direct threat to my psychological and physical recovery. The charge nurse stops writing on her clipboard. She looks at me and then glances at Elias. Hospital staff deal with complex family dynamics daily, but they recognize genuine danger when a patient speaks with such chilling precision. I ask her to enact a strict privacy protocol. I instruct her to remove my name from the patient directory. If anyone calls the front desk asking for Ariana Foster, the staff must legally state there is no patient by that name admitted to the facility. The nurse nods. She types a series of commands into the terminal beside my bed. She assures me that the security desk in the main lobby will receive a direct alert. She promises that if David and Susan attempt to bypass the front reception, the hospital security guards will physically escort them off the premises. The medical perimeter is now secure, but a physical barrier is only the first line of defense. My father is bringing a lawyer. He intends to use the court system to bypass the hospital security. I need an operator who understands the vicious mechanics of corporate warfare. Elias reaches into his suit pocket and retrieves his own cell phone. He tells me Clara anticipated this exact scenario. She knew David would resort to legal manipulation if he ever lost control of the trust. Before her passing, Clara placed a specific litigator on retainer to activate the moment the commercial properties vested into my name. Elias dials the number. He speaks briefly and hands the phone to me. The voice on the other end of the line belongs to Marcus. He is a senior corporate litigator who specializes in aggressive civil defense and high net worth asset protection. Marcus does not offer warm pleasantries. He operates with a surgical pragmatism. He asks me to confirm my identity and my current mental state. I tell Marcus I am recovering from a systemic infection, but my cognitive functions are flawless. I inform him that my father is currently flying back to Illinois to challenge my competency. Marcus listens to the details. He tells me the Chicago real estate portfolio is currently valued in the tens of millions. The downtown office buildings generate a massive monthly revenue stream. He explains that David is desperate because the creditors from the failed technology startup of Liam are preparing to garnish his remaining wages. I authorize Marcus to fortify the empire. I instruct him to lock down the escrow accounts and transfer the management credentials to a secure blind server. I want every financial door welded shut before my father lands at O'Hare International Airport. Marcus agrees to execute the asset lockdown immediately, but his tone drops into a serious cautionary register. He warns me that securing the bank accounts will not stop the immediate threat. He explains the exact legal mechanism David and his hired attorney are going to deploy the moment they step off the plane. Marcus tells me that Illinois probate law contains a very specific loophole for emergency situations. David is going to file a petition claiming I am in a medically induced coma and unable to manage a sudden complex inheritance. If a judge signs that piece of paper, David will become my court-appointed guardian. He will have the power to walk into this hospital, override my medical directives, and seize the real estate portfolio, regardless of the security measures Marcus installs. The phone call ends. I hand the device back to Elias. The intravenous monitors hum in the quiet room. The physical perimeter of the hospital is locked, but the legal war is just beginning. David thinks he holds the trump card. He believes my sudden illness provides the perfect excuse to erase my independence. He is preparing to walk into the courthouse tomorrow morning to execute his final strike. He does not know that I have been waiting for this exact moment, and the trap I laid years ago is about to spring. The morning sun rises over the Chicago skyline, casting long shadows through the blinds of my hospital room. 2,000 miles away on the California coast, my parents are experiencing a profound financial hemorrhage. The automated digital notice from the estate attorney acts as a guillotine. David and Susan read the email on the patio of the Montage Resort, and the manufactured illusion of their wealth shatters instantly. They do not pause to enjoy the ocean view. They do not finish their expensive cocktails. They abandon their luxury vacation the exact second they realize the escrow accounts are locked. They pack their designer luggage in a frantic blur. They leave Liam standing in the hotel lobby. My brother is too busy nursing a hangover to understand the gravity of the situation. They do not buy him a return ticket. They abandon their golden child on the West Coast because their priority has shifted from indulging his ego to securing their own survival. They board the first commercial flight back to O'Hare International Airport. They spend the 4-hour journey plotting a strategy to bypass the ironclad trust Clara built. David knows he cannot fight the vesting date of the commercial real estate portfolio. The trust document is bulletproof. The properties legally belong to me, but David possesses a specific talent for navigating the dark corners of the legal system. When Liam failed his first attempt at launching a technology startup, he left behind a trail of angry vendors and broken lease agreements. David avoided those creditors by hiring attorneys who specialized in burying assets under shell corporations. He understands that when the front door is locked, a desperate man must break a window. He decides to exploit the very medical emergency that nearly ended my life. The moment the plane touches the runway in Illinois, David does not drive to the hospital to check my vital signs. He directs his rideshare vehicle to a dilapidated strip mall in the suburbs. He meets with a probate attorney named Gregory. Gregory is a man who operates on the fringes of ethical practice. He builds his career filing frivolous nuisance lawsuits and manipulating the probate courts for quick cash retainers. David hands Gregory a thick stack of cash. He outlines the parameters of the hostile strike. The plan relies entirely on my physical vulnerability. David knows I collapsed on a public stage. He knows I am lying in an intensive care unit recovering from systemic sepsis. He intends to weaponize the infection. Gregory drafts an emergency ex parte petition for temporary guardianship. The legal language is clinical and devastating. The document claims the severe bacterial infection caused profound cognitive impairment. It paints David and Susan as devastated caretakers stepping in to manage a sudden complex inheritance for their incapacitated daughter. The petition requests immediate total conservatorship over my person and my estate. Sitting in the sterile quiet of the trauma center, I listen to Marcus explain the mechanics of this filing through the speaker of my phone. Marcus breaks down the brutal reality of the Illinois probate system. A conservatorship is not a simple financial freeze. It is a legal execution. If a judge signs the emergency petition, I will cease to exist as an independent entity. I will lose the right to access my own bank accounts. I will lose the right to sign a lease or vote in a municipal election. I will lose the power to choose my own medical treatments. The court will hand the keys to my entire life to the man who left me to die. David will gain the legal authority to walk into any financial institution in Chicago and drain the real estate revenue accounts to zero. He will use the generational wealth Clara built to pay off the failed business debts of his favorite son. He will reduce me to a legal ghost trapped in my own body while he pillages my future. Marcus tells me that Gregory is filing the paperwork at the county courthouse this very morning. They are requesting an expedited hearing based on the severity of my medical status. They expect the judge to grant the temporary order by noon. They plan to walk into the hospital lobby, holding a court-mandated decree, forcing the administration to surrender my medical charts and grant them access to my room. The threat hangs in the cold hospital air. The monitors tracking my heart rate beat in a steady, unchanged rhythm. The average person facing the prospect of losing their bodily autonomy would panic. They would cry and beg for a negotiation. I do not panic. I feel a deep, chilling calm settle over my bones. I look at Elias sitting in the visitor chair. He is tracing the grain of his wooden cane with his thumb. We do not need to exchange words. The preparation we finalized 3 years ago is finally ready to deploy. To comprehend my lack of fear, you must understand a quiet conversation that took place in a crowded diner long before my graduation. During my sophomore year of college, I secured my first internship at the downtown accounting firm. I earned my first real paycheck and opened an independent bank account. Susan discovered the bank statements in my coat pocket. She demanded access to the funds, claiming she needed to monitor my spending habits. She tried to coerce the teller at the local branch into granting her parental oversight. She failed, but the attempt sent a clear warning. Susan viewed my independence as a direct threat. She wanted to ensure she maintained leverage over every aspect of my life. I met Elias for coffee the next morning. I was shaking with anger and fear. I realized my parents would eventually try to sabotage my career if I ever stopped serving their needs. Elias did not offer empty comfort. He offered strategy. He taught me that hoping for a predator to show mercy is a fatal flaw. He instructed me to build a fortress before the war ever started. He introduced me to a specialized estate planner. I spent my hard-earned internship money drafting a series of ironclad legal documents. We anticipated the day David and Susan would attempt to use my health or my finances against me. I signed the paperwork in front of a notary. We filed the originals in a secure safety deposit box and registered copies with the state health board. We built a shield designed to withstand a nuclear strike. Lying in the intensive care unit, I realized David is operating under a fatal delusion. He thinks he is ambushing a naive 24-year-old girl. He believes my silence over the years was a symptom of weakness. He assumed my habit of avoiding conflict meant I lacked a spine. He never realized my compliance was a calculated cover. I was gathering intelligence. I was studying his reckless maneuvers. I was learning exactly how to dismantle his foundation. David expects to encounter a frightened victim recovering from sepsis. He expects to use the legal system to bully me into submission, just as he bullied his creditors. He does not realize he is walking straight into a trap designed specifically for his brand of arrogance. I speak to Marcus through the phone speaker. I keep my voice flat and devoid of any tremor. I instruct him to monitor the county docket. I tell him to let Gregory file the frivolous paperwork. I want David to commit perjury on the official record. I want the hostile intent documented in black and white ink before the judge. We will not interrupt their filing. We will let them build their own gallows. Marcus agrees. He recognizes the tactical advantage of letting the opponent expose their flank. He promises to have the firm ready to counter the moment the petition enters the public system. He ends the call. I hand the phone back to Elias. The pieces are set on the board. My parents are driving toward the medical campus, convinced they hold the winning hand. They believe the emergency conservatorship will grant them the keys to the commercial real estate empire. They intend to march through the sliding glass doors of the lobby, brandishing their legal threats. They think they are the apex predators in this scenario. They are about to discover the true cost of underestimating the daughter they discarded. The confrontation is imminent, and the hospital lobby will serve as the execution block. The sliding glass doors of the main hospital lobby part with a soft mechanical hiss. David and Susan march through the entrance. They wear the wrinkled travel clothes from their aborted California vacation, but carry themselves with a heavy, unearned authority. Gregory trails a few steps behind them, holding a scuffed leather briefcase. They walk straight past the waiting area and approach the primary reception desk. David slaps his palm against the laminate counter. He demands the room number for Ariana Foster. He raises his chin and states he is the father possessing emergency conservatorship paperwork. The receptionist types on her keyboard. She sees the strict privacy protocol the charge nurse enacted hours ago. She shakes her head. She maintains a professional, neutral tone and informs David there is no patient by that name admitted to the facility. David turns a dark shade of red. He leans over the counter and threatens to sue the hospital administration. He signals for his hired lawyer to present the court-stamped petition. Before Gregory can unlatch his briefcase, a figure steps out from the shadows of the visitor lounge. Elias walks across the polished linoleum floor. The rhythmic tapping of his wooden cane echoes through the cavernous lobby, cutting through the ambient noise of the medical center. He positions himself directly in front of the secure elevator banks blocking their only path to the intensive care unit. David scoffs. He tells the old man to step aside. He claims family business supersedes an estranged grandfather. Elias does not raise his voice. He does not engage in a shouting match for the surrounding public to witness. He reaches into the inner pocket of his tailored wool suit jacket. He withdraws a crisp manila envelope. Elias ignores my parents. He turns his attention entirely to the hired attorney. He holds the envelope out to Gregory. He suggests the lawyer read the contents before committing a career-ending ethics violation. Gregory narrows his eyes. He takes the envelope and opens the flap. He pulls out the durable power of attorney and the advance healthcare directive. The heavy pages bear the embossed seal of a state-certified notary. Gregory scans the first paragraph. His eyes flick down to the dates printed at the bottom of the page. The documents were executed 3 years ago. They precede the emergency petition by 1,000 days. They are legally impenetrable. Elias points a weathered finger to the third page. He instructs Gregory to read the exclusionary clause aloud. The lawyer clears his throat. He reads the legal stipulation explicitly, barring David and Susan Foster from accessing medical records, making financial decisions, or serving as legal proxies under any circumstance. The clause specifically designates my parents as hostile actors unfit to govern my estate. Gregory operates on the fringes of the legal system, but he guards his license to practice law with vicious intensity. He looks at David. The realization washes over his face. He understands my father lied to him about my legal standing. Presenting a fraudulent emergency petition against a pre-existing ironclad power of attorney is a sanctionable offense. It invites disbarment and perjury charges. Gregory shoves the papers back into the chest of my father. He snaps his briefcase shut. He tells David their professional arrangement is terminated effective immediately. He refuses to refund the cash retainer. Gregory turns on his heel and walks out the sliding doors, leaving my parents stranded near the gift shop. The legal weapon evaporates into the sterile hospital air. Susan watches the lawyer abandon them. She realizes the logical approach failed, so she pivots immediately to emotional manipulation. She begins to weep loudly. She grabs the edge of the reception counter and wails about her dying daughter. She tries to make eye contact with passing doctors and visiting families, begging the strangers to take pity on a heartbroken mother. She hopes the public spectacle will generate enough sympathy to force the staff to bend the security rules. The head of hospital security approaches the desk. He is a tall man wearing a dark tactical uniform. He does not offer a tissue. Elias hands the security chief a duplicate copy of the exclusionary directive, along with a printed photograph of David and Susan. Elias formally requests an immediate trespass order. The security chief nods. Hospitals prioritize patient safety above all domestic disputes. He instructs his officers to flank the weeping woman and the furious man. He informs David that the property is now restricted. If they cross the visitor parking boundary again, the Chicago police will arrest them for criminal trespassing. The guards grip their elbows and physically escort them out of the building. I watch the entire event unfold through the live security feed on the tablet provided by the charge nurse. I see my parents shoved through the revolving doors. I see them standing on the freezing pavement, stripped of their leverage and banished from my presence. The satisfaction is a quiet, steady burn in my chest. The fortress holds. 3 days later, my white blood cell count normalizes. The infection recedes. The attending physician removes the intravenous lines and signs my discharge papers. I change into civilian clothes. I do not return to my old apartment. That address is compromised. My parents know the location. They know my previous routine. Marcus orchestrated a seamless relocation while I slept in the recovery ward. He utilized the newly secured real estate trust to authorize a discreet wire transfer. I step into a private town car waiting at the hospital loading dock. I leave the medical campus behind and drive straight into the heart of downtown Chicago. The vehicle pulls into the subterranean garage of a sleek glass high-rise overlooking the Chicago River. The building features biometric security scanners, 24-hour concierge service, and private elevator access, requiring a coded key fob. I ride the car to the 42nd floor. I unlock the heavy steel door to my new residence. The space is vast. It features dark hardwood floors and floor-to-ceiling windows, showcasing the sprawling urban skyline. It is a fortress suspended in the clouds. I unpack my minimal belongings. I purchase a new smartphone and permanently sever my old cellular line. I fade into the digital background, leaving no forwarding address and no trail to follow. I spend the first evening sitting by the window, watching the city lights flicker to life. The silence in the apartment is profound. It is the sound of true independence. For a brief moment, I enjoy the peace. My parents are locked out and facing imminent financial ruin. Their power over me is eradicated. But the ecosystem of a toxic family relies on a delicate balance of extracted resources. With David and Susan, Broke, the primary beneficiary of their enabling, suddenly faces a catastrophic deficit. Liam is sitting in his Oak Brook condominium, realizing the bank of mom and dad is shuttered. His lavish lifestyle requires constant funding. His extravagant wedding to a wealthy socialite is approaching rapidly, and the elite vendors are demanding payments he cannot make. He is about to discover that his usual benefactors are ruined. His desperate eyes are turning toward the sister he abandoned, and he is preparing to launch a strike of his own. Liam navigates the crowded terminal at Los Angeles International Airport with a rising sense of dread. For his entire adult life, he relied on a single phone call to resolve his problems. Whenever a business venture failed or a credit card declined, his parents immediately wired the necessary funds. Sitting in the airport terminal, he dials the number of his father. The call goes straight to a generic voicemail. He dials his mother. Susan answers, but she does not offer her usual comforting tone. Her voice is strained and brittle. She informs her golden child that the trust fund is locked out of their reach. She tells him the commercial real estate portfolio belongs entirely to his sister. The financial safety net they relied upon is gone. Liam hangs up the phone and stares at the departure screens. He is forced to use the last remaining balance on his personal credit card to purchase a coach ticket back to Illinois. The humiliation of sitting in a cramped middle seat for 4 hours is only a fraction of the nightmare waiting for him in Chicago. He returns to his Oak Brook condominium. The space is filled with expensive modern art and designer furniture, but it feels like a cage. Sitting on the kitchen island is a thick leather binder. It contains the planning documents for his upcoming wedding. In less than 3 weeks, Liam is scheduled to marry a woman named Victoria. Victoria comes from an elite lineage of corporate defense lawyers operating out of the Gold Coast neighborhood. She navigates high society with effortless grace and evaluates human worth through exclusive club memberships and charity gala invitations. When Liam proposed to her, he presented himself as a thriving technology visionary, backed by a substantial family trust. He sold her an illusion of equal wealth and unlimited potential. Victoria accepted the proposal based on a hallucinated reality. The wedding is booked at a premier luxury hotel in downtown Chicago. The guest list includes 300 of the most influential socialites and executives in the city. The leather binder on the kitchen island holds the final invoices. The imported floral arrangements, the premium catering, and the ballroom rental require a final deposit of $50,000. The payment is due by the end of the week. Liam opens his banking application. His checking account holds less than $400. The vendors are leaving voicemails threatening to cancel the contracts. If the wedding collapses, Victoria will discover the truth. She will realize he is a fraud living on borrowed time. The elite social circle she occupies will exile him permanently. Liam is cornered. He cannot squeeze another dollar from his parents, and his own credit is ruined. He turns his desperate focus toward the only person who holds the capital he needs to survive. He attempts to locate me. He drives into the city and visits my old apartment building. The landlord informs him my unit is empty. He tries to access my secure high-rise, but the biometric security systems and the concierge desk block his entry. The guards refuse to confirm my residency. He realizes he cannot intimidate me in person. He is forced to launch a digital assault. Through a mutual acquaintance at my former university, Liam manages to acquire my new cellular number. I am sitting on the velvet sofa in my living room, watching the city lights reflect off the river when my screen lights up. The text messages arrive in a frantic, chaotic sequence. The first few messages are steeped in manufactured panic. Liam begs me to answer the phone. He tells me the wedding is falling apart. He calls the $50,000 a temporary loan and promises to pay me back with interest. He invokes the concept of family loyalty, typing long paragraphs about how sisters are supposed to support their brothers in times of crisis. I read the words scrolling across the glowing glass. I do not feel a single ounce of pity. I remember the months I spent working double shifts to buy my own textbooks while he drove a financed luxury car to music festivals. I remember the photograph of him holding a cocktail on a sunny beach while my internal organs were failing. I placed the device face down on the coffee table. I let the silence of my secure apartment serve as my answer. An hour passes. The blue bubbles stack up in the message thread without a single reply. Liam realizes his emotional manipulation is failing. The begging stops. The tone of his messages undergoes a drastic toxic shift. When an entitled person loses their primary source of funding, they do not retreat gracefully. They attempt to destroy the host. My phone vibrates with a new notification. I pick it up and read the latest message. It is a long, calculated paragraph designed to induce sheer panic. Liam writes that if I do not wire $50,000 into his account by tomorrow morning, he will file a formal ethics complaint with the Illinois Board of Examiners. The threat is highly specific and undeniably ruthless. The Board of Examiners is the state governing body that regulates all licensed financial auditors. Liam claims he will submit a sworn statement accusing me of embezzling corporate funds from my current accounting firm. He adds a second layer to the threat, stating he will manufacture evidence claiming I abuse prescription medications to cope with the grueling hours of my job. He outlines the consequences of his planned actions. He knows that in the world of financial auditing, reputation is the only currency that matters. An auditor must maintain an unblemished record of ethical behavior. If a formal complaint containing allegations of theft and drug abuse lands on the desk of the regulatory board, my career will face an immediate freeze. My accounting firm will be forced to place me on administrative leave pending an investigation. My clients will flee to rival agencies to protect their own financial ledgers. Even if the state eventually clears my name, the stain of a public inquiry will follow me for decades. Liam is attempting to hold my professional livelihood hostage. He believes this strike against my primary source of independent income will break my resolve. He assumes I am still the frightened younger sister who used to hide her academic achievements to protect his feelings. He expects me to read the extortion threat and crumble under the weight of the potential scandal. He thinks I will transfer the trust funds to his bank account simply to avoid a public conflict. He ends the message with a strict ultimatum: wire the money by dawn, or lose the career I bled to build. I sit in the quiet warmth of my high-rise apartment and read the extortion demand a second time. The words are supposed to trigger a trauma response. They are supposed to make my hands shake and my heart race. Instead, my pulse remains steady. I look at the digital threat and I recognize the fatal error Liam just committed. He put his extortion attempt in writing. I do not type a desperate reply pleading for mercy. I do not shed a single tear over the betrayal of a brother trying to ruin my life. I take a clear, high-resolution screenshot of his text message. I secure the evidence in an encrypted folder. Liam assumes he can use his lies to paralyze me, but he fails to realize I am no longer playing defense. He brought a fabricated threat to a psychological war, and I am preparing to counter his move with clinical undeniable proof. The dawn deadline is approaching, and I am about to introduce my brother to the true cost of extortion. The dawn deadline arrives. The sun climbs over Lake Michigan, casting a cold, sharp light across the floorboards of my living room. I am already awake, dressed in a tailored charcoal suit and drinking a cup of black coffee. Liam expects my phone to ring with apologies. He anticipates a frantic wire transfer to hit his account before normal business hours begin. He assumes fear will govern my actions. He thinks the threat of public shame will force me into submission because that was the dynamic we operated under for my entire childhood. Instead, I finish my coffee, pick up my leather briefcase, and walk out the door. My first destination is not the corporate accounting firm. I drive to a private medical laboratory located in the medical district. I walk up to the reception counter and request a comprehensive 10-panel hair follicle drug screen. A standard test provides only a brief window of a few days. A hair follicle analysis traces chemical history back for months. It is the most rigorous substance verification standard available in the industry. I pay for the expedited processing out of pocket. I sit in the sterile waiting area and watch the clock on the wall. The technician calls my name and clips a small sample from the nape of my neck. 2 hours later, the certified results are printed on heavy watermarked paper. The chemical analysis is pristine. There are 0 traces of any illicit substances or unprescribed medications in my system. I place the sealed laboratory report into my briefcase right next to the printed screenshot of the extortion text message. My defense is now tangible and irrefutable. I navigate the morning traffic into the heart of the financial district. My accounting firm occupies 3 floors of a prominent skyscraper on LaSalle Street. The environment operates on discretion, precision, and unblemished reputations. Rumors destroy careers here faster than poor performance. Liam knows this ecosystem well enough to weaponize it, but he lacks a fundamental understanding of how corporate loyalty actually functions. Elite firms protect their top producers. They shield their assets. I bypass my cubicle and walk directly toward the executive suites. I request an immediate closed-door meeting with the 2 senior managing partners. These are men who navigate federal tax audits and high-stakes corporate mergers daily. They do not entertain office drama. They deal strictly in facts and ledgers. I take a seat across from their polished oak desk. I do not cry. I do not lower my gaze or apologize for the interruption. I open my briefcase and extract the documents with measured, deliberate movements. I slide the time-stamped screenshot of the text message across the wood surface. I allow them a moment to read the specific threats targeting my professional license and the reputation of their firm. Next, I place the official hospital trespass order right beside it, showing the mandated police perimeter established against my parents. Finally, I present the sealed hair follicle drug screen. I keep my voice level and strip away any emotional inflection. I inform the partners that my estranged family members are currently experiencing extreme financial distress. I explain that my brother is attempting to extort me for a substantial sum of money, using the threat of fabricated ethics complaints to paralyze my career. I state that I am providing these documents to preemptively shield the firm from any external harassment. The senior partners study the paperwork. They look at the text message and then review the pristine laboratory results. They look at me. I have spent years arriving early, leaving late, and maintaining an immaculate auditing record for their top-tier clients. They recognize the difference between a liability and a victim of outside extortion. The dynamic in the room shifts from concern to protective calculation. The managing partner picks up his desk phone and dials the internal legal department. He briefs the corporate counsel on the situation. Within minutes, a protocol is established. The partners place the protective documents into my secure personnel file. They inform the reception desk that any phone calls, emails, or physical deliveries bearing the name of Liam Foster or my parents are to be routed directly to the legal team. If Liam attempts to contact the Board of Examiners, the firm will deploy their own corporate attorneys to countersue him for defamation and tortious interference. The professional vulnerability Liam tried to exploit is now welded shut. He brought a baseless threat to an institution that fights with federal litigators. I return to my desk and initiate the second phase of my defense strategy. It is time to implement a total information diet. A predator cannot hunt a target they cannot track. I open my computer and begin the systematic erasure of my digital footprint. I change the passwords to every banking portfolio, investment account, and utility bill. I implement two-factor authentication using a newly purchased encrypted device. I log into my social media profiles. I do not simply unfriend my relatives. I utilize the strictest privacy settings available, blocking Liam, Susan, David, and every extended family member who might serve as a conduit for their manipulation. I remove my employment history and my location data. I become a digital ghost. The channel of communication is permanently severed. The silence I impose is not a passive retreat. It is an active fortification designed to starve them of oxygen. While I secure my perimeter, Liam is pacing the hardwood floors of his Oak Brook condominium. The morning deadline passes. The banking application on his phone shows a negative balance. He waits for the notification of a $50,000 wire transfer. The screen remains blank. The realization that I ignored his ultimatum begins to curdle into sheer panic. He decides to execute the strike. He searches the internet for the main phone number of my accounting firm. He prepares his fabricated story intending to demand a conversation with the Human Resources Department. He dials the number and waits for the receptionist to answer. He requests my department ready to unleash his accusations. The receptionist places him on a brief hold. When the line connects again, Liam does not hear the concerned voice of a human resources manager. He hears the sharp, pragmatic tone of the corporate defense counsel. The lawyer informs Liam that his extortion attempt is fully documented. The counsel advises him that any further contact with the firm or the state auditing board will result in an immediate civil lawsuit for damages. The call disconnects, leaving Liam staring at his phone in stunned disbelief. The trap he set for me snapped back onto his own fingers. He is entirely isolated. He cannot extort me. He cannot contact me. He cannot leverage my career. The invoices for his luxury wedding are sitting on his kitchen counter. The premier caterers and the hotel event coordinators are leaving voicemails demanding the final deposits. The elite socialite he plans to marry is finalizing her dress fittings, expecting a flawless celebration. Liam has no money, no credit, and no remaining benefactors. The golden child is staring down the barrel of public humiliation, and he has no way to stop the impending collision. The extortion attempt fails, leaving the unearned kingdom of my brother in ruins. Yet the desperation of the Foster family does not end with Liam. A toxic system operates like a starving organism. When one appendage fails to secure nourishment, the host must find another way to feed. David and Susan are watching their son unravel from afar. Their own financial doom is approaching rapidly. The mortgage lender for their home is refusing to grant another extension. The bank auction is scheduled and their options are dwindling to zero. Susan realizes the direct approach is dead. She cannot bully me into signing a deed, and her son cannot extort me into writing a check. The legal and digital avenues are blocked. Susan decides to pivot to the only battlefield where she believes she still holds superior terrain. She cannot control my bank accounts, but she assumes she can still control my reputation. She prepares to weaponize her affluent suburban social circle. She believes that if she tightens the screws of public shame, the pressure will force me out of my fortress. The war is shifting from private extortion to a highly orchestrated public smear campaign, and Susan is gathering her audience. The morning after locking down my professional reputation, I turn my focus toward the physical architecture of my new reality. The Corporate Defense Council neutralized my brother, but the financial empire Clara left me requires active management. I take a private car to the top floor of a prominent institution in the Loop. I sit across a polished walnut table from Mr. Mitchell. He is an elite estate fiduciary managing high net worth assets for generations of Chicago families. He does not treat me like a young, inexperienced girl. He recognizes the legal gauntlet I just survived. He treats me like a sovereign entity. Mr. Mitchell slides a thick-bound ledger across the table. He opens the cover and walks me through the exact specifications of the trust. Clara did not just leave me a savings account. She left a living, breathing ecosystem of commercial real estate. The portfolio consists of 3 premium office buildings situated in the heart of the financial district. The documents detail long-term corporate leases, reliable tenants, and a monthly revenue stream that surpasses my annual auditing salary. I stare at the numbers printed on the heavy stock paper. This is the capital David tried to steal. This is the leverage Susan intended to use to fund her suburban illusions. The average person handed this level of sudden wealth might succumb to the temptation of instant gratification. Liam would have purchased a fleet of imported sports cars and booked a private jet to a tropical island. I do not feel the urge to squander a single dollar. My childhood conditioned me to view resources as fragile and fleeting. Clara built this empire with ruthless discipline, and I intend to honor her legacy by adopting the exact same strategy. I instruct Mr. Mitchell to reinvest the surplus revenue into low-risk index funds. I want the capital to generate its own gravity. But I do need a sanctuary. The high-rise apartment I temporarily occupy is a rental, and I require a permanent fortress. I direct Mr. Mitchell to establish a blind limited liability company. I name the corporate entity using a string of random numerical digits, ensuring my legal identity remains entirely detached from public property records. Using this corporate shield, I begin the search for a home. I bypass the flashy penthouses and the glassy modern towers. I find a historic townhouse nestled on a quiet tree-lined street in the Lincoln Park neighborhood. The property features a classic brick facade and a private walled courtyard. The security systems are state-of-the-art, featuring biometric locks and reinforced steel doors. I authorize the fiduciary to execute the purchase in pure cash. The transaction clears without a single mortgage application or credit check. I hold the heavy brass keys in my hand, realizing I own the ground beneath my feet. I hire a discreet moving company to transport my minimal belongings. I spend the next few weeks curating the interior. I refuse to replicate the chaotic, cluttered aesthetic of the Oakbrook mansion. I furnish the rooms with deliberate purpose. I lay thick woven rugs over the original hardwood to dampen any echo. I purchase solid oak dining chairs and a heavy teak desk for my home office. The environment is grounded, sturdy, and silent. When I close the front door, the noise of the city and the lingering echoes of my toxic family disappear. I stand in the center of my living room and listen to the profound quiet. This silence is a stark contrast to the bedroom I occupied as a child. In the foster household, my space was never my own. Susan used my narrow room near the garage as a secondary storage closet. She would barge in without knocking, tossing outgrown winter coats and discarded exercise equipment onto my bed. I was forced to navigate around their debris. Privacy was considered an insult to the family hierarchy. Now I dictate who crosses my threshold, and the guest list is restricted to 0. I am building a foundation that no parent or brother can ever compromise. While I arrange the solid oak furniture in my quiet fortress, an entirely different reality is unfolding 30 miles west in the affluent suburbs. The financial decay of the Foster family reaches a terminal velocity. David sits at the kitchen island of the Oak Brook mansion staring at a stack of mail. The envelopes bear the red urgent lettering of final collection notices. The balloon payment on their primary mortgage triggered 2 days ago. The figure required to keep the property out of foreclosure is staggering. David opens his laptop and logs into his banking portal. The accounts are drained. The credit lines he relied upon to maintain their lavish lifestyle are frozen due to severe delinquency. He picks up his phone and attempts to call his network of private investors, hoping to secure a bridge loan. The investors ignore his calls. They read the market indicators and recognize a sinking ship. David is a man who spent his entire adult life projecting an aura of effortless prosperity. He wore tailored suits and boasted about his investment acumen at neighborhood barbecues. The facade is crumbling, exposing the hollow, panicked debtor underneath. Susan walks into the kitchen. She sees the foreclosure notice resting on the granite counter. The reality of their destitution hits her with the force of a physical strike. She looks around the sprawling house. She sees the vaulted ceilings, the imported marble floors, and the expansive bay windows. She curated this space to serve as a monument to her own social status. It was the physical proof that she had escaped her own impoverished origins. Now the bank is preparing to repossess her identity. The psychological torment of their situation is amplified by their awareness of my current status. They know the commercial real estate portfolio vested. They know I am sitting on millions of dollars in liquid capital and appreciating assets. The quiet, compliant daughter they abused and discarded possesses the exact financial cure they desperately need, yet they cannot access a single cent. The legal boundaries I erected act as a pane of bulletproof glass. They are forced to press their hands against the barrier, starving on one side while I thrive on the other. The realization that they hold 0 leverage breeds a venomous desperation. David retreats into silence, nursing his shattered ego with stiff drinks in his home office. But Susan does not surrender to quiet defeat. Narcissistic personalities cannot process rejection logically. If they cannot control the target, they must destroy the perception of the target. Susan realizes she cannot coerce me into signing a quitclaim deed. She knows her son failed to extort me for wedding funds. The legal and digital channels are firmly blocked. Susan looks at the final notices on the counter and decides to shift the battlefield to the only arena she still understands. She intends to weaponize her social sphere. For decades, Susan cultivated a pristine reputation within the affluent suburban country club. She served on charity committees and hosted lavish luncheons projecting the image of a flawless, dedicated matriarch. She decides to use this carefully constructed network to launch a devastating offensive. She believes that if she tightens the screws of public shame, the overwhelming community pressure will force me out of my fortress. The conflict is about to spill out of the private sector and into the vicious world of high society gossip. The realization that the legal and digital avenues are permanently sealed forces Susan to change her strategy. She sits in the kitchen of the Oak Brook property and stares at the final eviction notice resting on the granite counter. Her husband failed to secure an emergency conservatorship. Her son failed to extort a ransom. The bank is preparing to change the locks, and she has 0 financial leverage left to deploy. She knows she cannot bully me into signing a quitclaim deed. She knows she cannot hack my encrypted bank accounts. But Susan operates on a fundamental principle of toxic dynamics. If you cannot control the target, you must control how the rest of the world perceives the target. She decides to pivot to the only battlefield where she still commands the high ground. She prepares to wage a war of public perception. Susan dresses in a tailored cashmere sweater and a modest pearl necklace. She drives her least luxury sedan to the affluent suburban country club where she has maintained a membership for 2 decades. The club features manicured golf courses, vaulted dining rooms, and an exclusive membership list comprised of local politicians, real estate developers, and corporate executives. For years, Susan used this environment as her personal theater. She hosted charity luncheons and organized holiday galas, building a pristine reputation as a dedicated, self-sacrificing matriarch. She walks into the main dining room. The air smells of roasted prime rib and expensive perfume. The sound of clinking silverware and low murmuring conversations fills the space. Susan does not stride to her usual table with her typical manufactured confidence. She slumps her shoulders. She keeps her gaze fixed on the patterned carpet. She approaches a table where 5 prominent women from the club auxiliary are sipping iced tea. Susan pulls out a mahogany chair and sits down. She waits for the women to ask her what is wrong. When the question comes, Susan brings a monogrammed linen napkin to her eyes. She executes an award-winning performance. She weeps softly, ensuring her makeup remains intact while projecting the image of a woman carrying an unbearable burden. She spins a fabricated narrative designed to elicit maximum sympathy and maximum outrage. She does not mention the luxury trip to Laguna Beach. She omits the detail about ignoring the calls from the trauma center while I was fighting a systemic infection. Instead, she weaves a fictional tragedy focusing entirely on the late Clara and the commercial real estate portfolio. Susan tells the women that during the final months of Clara battling heart failure, I used my skills as a financial auditor to manipulate a dying woman. She claims I isolated my grandmother from the rest of the family. She paints a picture of me sitting beside a hospital bed, forcing a confused elderly woman to alter her estate planning documents. Susan states that I rewrote the trust to funnel the entire generational wealth into my own name, leaving my parents destitute. To understand why these educated, wealthy women believe her so readily, you have to look at the psychological groundwork Susan laid during my childhood. Susan was the master of the preemptive narrative. When I was a teenager, I won a state mathematics competition. Susan did not celebrate the victory. She told the neighborhood mothers that I spent too much time indoors and lacked healthy social skills. When Liam totaled his first car after drinking at a party, Susan spun the event as a minor lapse in judgment caused by the immense pressure of his academic schedule. She spent 20 years conditioning her social circle to view Liam as a fragile star and me as a cold, calculating machine. Now she leverages that exact foundation. The women at the table listen to her story and nod in sympathetic horror. The narrative fits the established character profiles Susan spent decades building. She finishes her performance by stating the bank is seizing her home by the end of the month. She plays the tragic martyr facing homelessness because of her greedy, ungrateful daughter. The country club operates as a wealthy echo chamber. Gossip is the primary currency exchanged over tennis matches and charity planning committees. The fabricated story leaves the dining room table before the lunch service even concludes. The rumor spreads rapidly through the affluent Illinois suburbs. It jumps from the country club members to the local business owners and eventually reaches the ears of my extended family. My aunts, uncles, and distant cousins hear the tragic tale of Susan losing her home to my financial manipulation. These are relatives who only interact with my parents at holiday parties and summer barbecues. They do not know the reality of the frozen bus stops or the hidden academic awards. They only know the polished facade Susan presents. They absorb the lie and mobilize into a digital firing squad. I am sitting at the heavy teak desk in my Lincoln Park townhouse reviewing a complex tax ledger for a corporate client. The silence of my secure fortress is broken by the sudden rapid buzzing of my new smartphone. I implemented a total information diet and locked down my social media profiles. I changed my number and blocked my immediate family. But a determined social network will always find the cracks in a digital perimeter. They utilize professional networking platforms linked to my accounting firm. They locate mutual acquaintances from my university days. The barrier holds against my parents, but the extended family manages to bypass the outer walls. The messages begin to flood my screen. I watch the notifications stack up in a relentless sequence. Aunt Diane sends a long paragraph demanding to know how I can sleep at night in a luxury apartment while my mother packs her belongings into cardboard boxes. Cousin Marcus accuses me of elder abuse and threatens to contact the state authorities to investigate my relationship with Clara. A woman who attended church with my parents for 15 years sends a message calling me a sociopath. They demand I return the stolen real estate portfolio. They instruct me to contact a lawyer immediately and reverse the vesting process. They hurl accusations attempting to shame me into submission. Susan is sitting in the country club lounge sipping her iced tea and soaking in the sympathy of her peers. She assumes she has orchestrated a flawless checkmate. She believes the sheer weight of community disapproval will crush my resolve. In her mind, I am still the quiet teenager who desperately wanted to blend in and avoid conflict. She remembers the girl who scrubbed the kitchen floors and handed over her internship paychecks just to keep the peace. Susan thinks social rejection is my greatest fear. She expects me to read these hateful messages and panic. She anticipates that I will contact my estate fiduciary, beg for a reversal of the trust, and write a massive check to save my local reputation. She is betting her entire survival on my inherent weakness. The notifications continue to buzz against the wood of my desk. The screen lights up with another wave of vitriol from people who never once asked if I survived the sepsis infection. I pick up the device. I read the hateful paragraphs one by one. I do not feel the crushing anxiety Susan is counting on. I do not feel the urge to draft a lengthy emotional defense explaining the truth about the conservatorship attempt or the extortion. I feel the steady rhythmic pulse in my wrist. Susan wanted to play a game of public perception. She wanted to invite the entire Illinois community into our private war. She thought she could control the narrative by spreading a lie while I remained silent. But she forgot that a lie is a fragile construct, requiring constant maintenance, while the truth is a blunt instrument. I sit back in my chair. I look at the dark skyline through the windows of my townhouse. Susan has inadvertently handed me the perfect audience. She gathered all the spectators into one arena. She set the stage for her own total destruction. I will not surrender my assets, and I will not apologize. I am going to execute a counterstrike that will shatter her pristine reputation into 1,000 irreparable pieces and leave her permanently exiled from the society she values above her own children. The glowing screen of my smartphone illuminates the dark wood of my teak desk. The notifications continue to stack up in a relentless cascade of judgment. My extended family and the affluent members of the Illinois Suburban Country Club are demanding answers. They want me to surrender the commercial real estate portfolio to save my mother from eviction. They believe the tragic narrative Susan spun over iced tea. They assume their coordinated digital harassment will force me to crack under the weight of social disapproval. The old version of me would have drafted a frantic defense. The girl who spent her childhood trying to earn a seat at the family table would have typed out a dozen emotional paragraphs. She would have pleaded with her aunts and cousins to believe her side of the story. She would have detailed the emotional neglect and the financial disparities. I do not type a single word of defense. Engaging in a public debate with a narcissist is a tactical error. It grants them the attention they crave and validates their false narrative. Susan built her entire network by trading gossip at charity luncheons, using unverified stories to mask her own deep insecurities. I built my career as a financial auditor by relying on verifiable ledgers and undeniable data. I decide to let the raw data speak for itself. I open the photo gallery on my device. I scroll past the architectural references for my new townhouse and locate the exact evidence I need. I select the internet photograph Liam posted. The image is crisp and vibrant. It shows Liam, Susan, and David sitting on the sunlit patio of the Montage Resort in Laguna Beach. They are smiling and holding expensive cocktails garnished with fresh lime. The designer sunglasses obscure the eyes of my mother. The caption reads, "Finally, a family trip, no stress, no drama." The timestamp embedded in the metadata and displayed clearly on the post shows the exact hour they uploaded the image on a Saturday morning. Next, I locate a photograph I took myself just a few days later. It is a harsh clinical picture. The background consists of sterile blue hospital sheets. Resting on the fabric is my own pale wrist. Wrapped tightly around my skin is the plastic admittance bracelet from the intensive care unit. The black barcode stands out against the white plastic. Printed boldly beneath the barcode is the admittance date and the precise time of my arrival. I open a simple editing application on my phone. I place the two images side by side. The visual contrast is staggering. On the left side of the screen is a portrait of manufactured luxury and leisure funded by secret debt. On the right side of the screen is a stark documentation of a fight for physical survival. The timestamps on both images align perfectly. They prove beyond any reasonable doubt that the tropical vacation and my medical emergency occurred during the exact same window of time. I save the composite image to my secure folder. I open the text message thread from Aunt Diane. She just sent another long paragraph accusing me of elder abuse and demanding I reverse the trust vesting process. I attach the composite image to her message thread. I do not include a lengthy explanation. I type one single sentence below the photograph. They chose margaritas while I was on life support. I hit send. I copy the image and the exact same sentence. I open the message thread from Cousin Marcus. I paste the evidence and hit send. I move methodically down the list of every relative, family, friend, and country club acquaintance who sent me a hateful message. I reply to all of them with cold, clinical precision. One picture, one sentence, no further justification. I place the phone face down on my desk and turn my attention back to my corporate tax ledgers. The silence in my townhouse remains unbroken. The reaction on the other end of the digital network is immediate and devastating to the narrative Susan constructed. The extended family members are enablers, but they are capable of reading a timestamp. Aunt Diane is likely sitting in her suburban living room preparing to draft another insult when the image loads on her screen. She looks at the smiling face of her sister-in-law on a sunny beach. She looks at the hospital barcode documenting my fight against sepsis. The realization hits the extended family like a physical blow. They recognize in an instant that they were weaponized to defend a lie. The story Susan spun about me isolating Clara and rewriting estate documents disintegrates. A mother who abandons her daughter during a critical medical emergency to drink cocktails in California loses all moral authority. The relatives realize they directed their outrage at the victim while the true predators were lounging by the Pacific Ocean. The digital mob goes entirely silent. My phone does not buzz with further accusations. The demands for me to return the real estate portfolio cease instantly. A few hours later, scattered apologies begin to trickle into my inbox. Aunt Diane sends a brief message claiming she did not know the full story. Cousin Marcus blames Susan for misleading him. I do not reply to a single apology. I read their messages and permanently block their numbers. They showed their true character when they assumed the worst of me without asking for the facts. I have no interest in granting them absolution. The perimeter of my life remains closed. The fallout from the exposed lie sweeps through the affluent suburbs of Illinois with ruthless efficiency. The composite image is forwarded from relative to relative and eventually lands on the phones of the women in the country club auxiliary. These are the same socialites who comforted Susan in the dining room while she wept into her linen napkin. The following afternoon, Susan drives her leased sedan to the country club. She expects to be greeted with the same warmth and sympathy she received the day before. She intends to continue playing the tragic martyr facing imminent eviction. She hands her keys to the valet and walks through the double doors into the main dining room. The atmosphere in the room shifts the moment she steps onto the patterned carpet. The ambient noise of clinking silverware and polite conversation drops into a heavy, strained silence. Susan walks toward her usual table near the windows. The 5 prominent women from the auxiliary are already seated. Susan approaches them with a manufactured smile, preparing to share another tale of her suffering. The women do not smile back. The head of the auxiliary committee, a woman who dictates the social hierarchy of the entire club, picks up her iced tea and turns her chair slightly away from Susan. The other women follow suit. They avert their eyes and refuse to acknowledge her presence. The physical distance they create is subtle but unmistakable. In the language of high society, a turned back is the ultimate execution. The women saw the time-stamped photographs. They know Susan used their empathy to cover up her own depravity. Wealthy social circles can forgive financial mistakes, but they despise being manipulated by a predator wearing a mask of piety. They refuse to associate with a woman exposed as a liar and an absent mother. Susan stands in the center of the dining room entirely isolated. The illusion she dedicated her life to maintaining evaporates into the air. She is not the matriarch of an elite family. She is a fraud facing foreclosure, and the entire room knows it. She turns around and walks out of the club stripped of her reputation and her final arena of influence. The smear campaign is dead. Susan and David are left with no home, no money, and no social standing. The boundaries I built are holding firm, protecting the generational wealth Clara entrusted to me. The war with my parents is functionally over, but a toxic family structure creates a wide blast radius. The truth does not just destroy the architects of the lie. It cascades downward, dismantling everyone who benefited from the illusion. Liam is still living in his Oak Brook condominium, trying to salvage his upcoming wedding. He believes he can hide the financial ruin of his parents from his wealthy fiancée. He assumes his unearned kingdom is safe from the fallout. He does not realize the digital evidence I deployed is already spreading beyond the country club and making its way toward the elite corporate lawyers of the Gold Coast. The golden child is about to face the ultimate audit. The digital composite of the hospital barcode and the sunny patio does not remain confined to the suburban country club. Information in affluent circles operates like water finding the lowest point. It seeps through exclusive memberships and trickles into the boardrooms of downtown Chicago. The Gold Coast neighborhood, where Victoria and her family reside, thrives on prestige, but it survives through rigorous risk management. Victoria belongs to a lineage of corporate defense lawyers. Her father, Jonathan, is a senior partner at an elite firm. He evaluates liabilities for a living. When the composite photograph lands in his inbox forwarded by a country club acquaintance, he does not react with simple gossip. He treats the image as a red flag on a pending merger. Jonathan directs his paralegals to run a quiet background check on the Foster family. Public records are unforgiving. Within an hour, the paralegals uncover the foreclosure docket for the Oak Brook mansion. They find the delinquent commercial lease from the failed technology startup Liam launched. They also verify the transfer of the commercial real estate trust, identifying me as the sole legal beneficiary. The financial autopsy is undeniable. The Foster family is a bankrupt entity attempting to marry into generational wealth to secure a bailout. Jonathan summons his daughter into his private study and presents the findings. Victoria was raised to view marriage as a strategic partnership. She expects her partner to bring equal capital and unblemished social standing to the table. Looking at the evidence, she realizes she is engaged to a financial parasite. The medical abandonment of a sister in the intensive care unit is a moral failure, but the hidden bankruptcy is an unforgivable breach of contract. 30 miles away, Liam is pacing the hardwood floors of his luxury condominium. The air conditioning hums, but he is sweating. His laptop screen displays a final notice from the Premier Catering Company. The $20,000 invoice requires a wire transfer by the end of the business day. He has zero funds available. He is rehearsing a speech, preparing to tell Victoria that a temporary banking error is holding up his capital. He assumes he can deploy his usual charm to convince her father to float the deposit. The security buzzer rings. Victoria takes the private elevator up to his unit. She does not knock. She uses her key and steps into the foyer. She is wearing a tailored trench coat and carrying her leather handbag. Liam forces a wide, confident smile. He walks toward her, offering to pour a glass of expensive wine. Victoria does not take off her coat. She bypasses his outstretched hand and walks directly to the glass coffee table in the center of the living room. She reaches into her handbag. She does not pull out a wedding planner or a fabric swatch. She extracts 2 pieces of paper. She drops the first paper onto the glass surface. It is the final warning notice from the catering company. She drops the second paper right next to it. It is a printed copy of the composite image showing my hospital bracelet and his beach vacation. Victoria looks at Liam. She asks him a direct question regarding the status of his trust fund. Liam falters. The confident smile vanishes. He tries to fall back on his lifelong training. He attempts to gaslight her. He stammers that the photograph is a misunderstanding. He claims I am a bitter, estranged sibling trying to cause trouble. He waves his hand at the catering invoice and blames a slow processing delay from his wealth manager. Victoria does not argue. She delivers the data her father compiled. She recites the exact dollar amount of the impending foreclosure on the Oakbrook mansion. She names the specific creditors hunting him for his failed startup debts. She states clearly that she knows the commercial real estate portfolio vested entirely to me. Liam stands frozen in his own living room. The protective bubble his parents spent 2 decades inflating pops in a matter of seconds. He cannot charm his way out of a public record. He cannot manipulate a woman who holds the actual financial ledger in her hands. Victoria looks at him with an expression of pure clinical disgust. She realizes the entire relationship was a hallucinated reality. He is not a technology visionary. He is a fraud who abandoned his dying sister to drink margaritas on a sunny beach. Victoria reaches for her left hand. She slides the expensive diamond engagement ring off her finger. She holds it for a fraction of a second. She does not throw it. She simply opens her hand and lets the ring fall. The heavy platinum band hits the glass coffee table with a sharp, decisive clink. The sound echoes through the quiet condominium. She informs Liam that the wedding is cancelled. She advises him to contact the remaining vendors and cancel the contracts before he incurs further legal liabilities. Victoria turns around and walks out the door. The heavy mechanical latch clicks shut behind her, leaving Liam standing in a profound, empty silence. The unearned kingdom collapses in a single afternoon. He loses his future wife. He loses his social status. He loses the financial lifeline he planned to exploit for the rest of his life. The condominium he occupies is leased under the names of his parents, and the rent is 3 months past due. The property manager already slid an eviction warning under his door. Liam is forced to confront the grim reality of his destitution. He grabs a few designer suitcases and packs his remaining clothes. He leaves the expensive modern art on the walls and the ergonomic furniture in the office. He walks out of the luxury high-rise and orders a cheap rideshare vehicle. He travels back to the affluent suburbs. The vehicle pulls into the driveway of the Oakbrook mansion. The bright red bank sign sits hammered into the front lawn. He carries his suitcases through the front door. The interior of the house is bleak. Susan and David are packing their lives into cheap cardboard boxes, preparing for the county sheriff to enforce the impending eviction. The golden child returns to his childhood bedroom in total defeat. He sits on the edge of his bare mattress, surrounded by packing tape and discarded memories. He has no trust fund to raid and no parents to bail him out. The accountability he evaded his entire life has finally arrived to collect the debt. Narcissism relies on externalizing blame. Liam cannot accept that his own actions destroyed his future. As he sits in the crumbling mansion, his panic hardens into a toxic delusion. He focuses all his rage on the person who exposed his foundation. He blames me for the canceled wedding. He blames me for the foreclosure. He knows the digital avenues are blocked. He cannot text me and he cannot call my accounting firm. Desperation overrides his logic. He decides he must find a way to corner me in the physical world. He begins to formulate a plan to bypass my security and ambush me, demanding I pay the ransom for the life he just lost. The walls of the Oakbrook mansion are bare. The luxury furniture has gone sold to pay off a fraction of the mounting debt. Liam sits on a deflated air mattress in his childhood bedroom. The reality of his ruined engagement and his shattered social standing refuses to penetrate his ego. Narcissistic personalities operate on a strict mechanism of externalized blame. When a golden child falls from grace, they never look in the mirror. They hunt for a scapegoat. Liam decides his current destitution is my fault. He ignores the fact that he lied to his fiancée and abandoned me in a trauma center. He focuses entirely on the revenge he believes he is owed. The digital perimeter I established is impenetrable. He knows he cannot text my phone or email my corporate account. The defense counsel at my accounting firm promised an immediate civil lawsuit if he attempted to contact the office. He realizes the digital avenues are closed. He decides he must bridge the gap in the physical world. He formulates a plan to corner me outside the safety of my secure high-rise and the protected walls of my employer. He remembers the location of the LaSalle Street skyscraper where my firm operates. He borrows a rusted sedan from a former college acquaintance and drives into downtown Chicago. He parks near the loading docks and begins a surveillance routine. He watches the heavy glass doors of the lobby. He studies the patterns of the employees entering and exiting the building. By the third morning, he identifies my routine. He notices that I leave the skyscraper at 10 in the morning to purchase a black coffee from a boutique cafe located adjacent to a concrete parking structure. The air is crisp and cold. The wind sweeps off Lake Michigan, carrying the scent of damp concrete and roasted espresso. I step out of the cafe holding a paper cup. I turn the corner to walk down the narrow side street leading back to my office. A shadow detaches itself from the concrete pillar near the parking garage. Liam steps directly into my path. He does not resemble the polished entrepreneur who wore custom suits and ordered expensive cocktails in Laguna Beach. His clothing is wrinkled. His hair is uncombed. The desperation radiates from his posture. He shifts his weight, blocking the narrow sidewalk. He assumes the physical ambush will trigger my old trauma responses. He expects me to shrink back and offer a frantic apology to avoid a public confrontation. I do not take a step back. I stand my ground on the pavement. I look at him with the same detached observation a scientist uses to study a failing experiment. I ask him what he wants. Liam does not offer a greeting. He launches straight into a frantic demand. He informs me that the luxury hotel and the premier caterers are refusing to drop the cancellation fees for his ruined wedding. The vendors are threatening to sue him for breach of contract. He needs $50,000 by the end of the week to settle the invoices and avoid a public civil judgment. He demands I write him a check drawn from the Commercial Real Estate Trust. I take a sip of my coffee. I tell him his wedding invoices are not my responsibility. I step to the right, intending to bypass him and return to my desk. Liam shifts his body to block me again. The panic in his eyes hardens into a toxic arrogance. He decides to deploy the extortion strategy he spent the last 3 days refining. He lowers his voice to a harsh whisper. He tells me he drafted 3 sworn affidavits. He claims the documents contain detailed allegations of corporate fraud and embezzlement. He states he will submit these fabricated documents to the Illinois Board of Examiners and the senior partners at my accounting firm. He outlines the damage he intends to inflict. He says the mere presence of a sworn affidavit will force the regulatory board to launch a formal inquiry. He knows my firm will place me on unpaid administrative leave the moment the allegations surface. He threatens to drag my pristine reputation through a grueling legal audit unless I pay the $50,000 ransom. He believes the threat of career destruction will force me to surrender my assets. He finishes his ultimatum and crosses his arms, waiting for me to panic. I feel a profound, chilling calm wash over my mind. I recognize the fatal error he is making. He assumes I am unarmed because I am not raising my voice. He fails to understand that in corporate warfare, the most dangerous weapons are invisible. I slide my right hand into the pocket of my tailored wool coat. My fingers find the smooth glass of my smartphone. I press the side button and blindly navigate to the voice recording application. I tap the center of the screen to initiate the capture. I look Liam directly in the eye. I maintain a flat, clinical tone. I ask him to clarify his terms. I state his demands out loud, ensuring the microphone picks up every syllable. I ask him to confirm that he is demanding a $50,000 payment in exchange for withholding fabricated sworn affidavits. Liam smiles. He interprets my request for clarification as a sign of surrender. He thinks I am trying to negotiate the terms of my own defeat. He leans in closer. He explicitly confirms the extortion plan. He boasts about his willingness to commit perjury to ruin my auditing career if the funds do not hit his account by tomorrow morning. He arrogantly details the lies he intends to tell the regulatory board. He finishes his confession and demands my answer. I pull the smartphone out of my coat pocket. The screen is illuminated, displaying the active recording application. The audio waveform dances across the digital display. I tap the red square to stop the recording. The file saves instantly to an encrypted cloud server. The smile vanishes from the face of my brother. The blood drains from his cheeks. He stares at the phone. He realizes he just confessed to a felony on a digital recording. He stammers a weak defense. He claims the recording is illegal. He cites a fragmented understanding of state privacy regulations, stating that Illinois requires two-party consent for any audio capture. He demands I delete the file, threatening to sue me for a privacy violation. I look at him with pure clinical disgust. I inform him that his understanding of the law is fundamentally flawed. I explain the specific legal exception written into the Illinois eavesdropping statute. I tell him the law explicitly allows a citizen to record a conversation without the consent of the other party if the recording captures a criminal offense, such as extortion or a direct threat of blackmail. The audio file I just captured is entirely legal and fully admissible in a court of law. Liam realizes the trap he walked into. He realizes he handed me the exact mechanism of his own destruction. He reaches forward, attempting to snatch the device from my hands. I step back. The look in my eyes stops his movement. He knows he cannot overpower me without facing an immediate assault charge on a crowded city street. I do not dial the police. A criminal trial is a slow process, and I prefer immediate execution. I open my email application. I locate the contact information for Jonathan, the father of Victoria. Jonathan is a senior partner at an elite corporate defense firm in the Gold Coast neighborhood. He is a man who holds immense influence over the hiring committees and corporate boards across the entire city of Chicago. I attach the audio file to a new email. I address the message to Jonathan. I type a brief subject line noting the predatory nature of his former prospective son-in-law. I look at Liam and hit send. I explain the trajectory of the email I just dispatched. I tell Liam that Jonathan evaluates risk for a living. When Jonathan listens to the audio file, he will hear a man willing to commit perjury and extortion to fund his own vanity. Jonathan will not keep that information to himself. He will share the recording with his partners. He will alert his network of corporate executives and human resource directors. I deliver the final verdict. I inform Liam that he is permanently blacklisted from the Chicago corporate sector. No reputable logistics firm, technology startup, or financial institution will ever hire a documented extortionist. His career in this city is over before it even began. I walk past him. He does not try to block my path again. He stands paralyzed on the concrete sidewalk, watching his future evaporate into the cold wind. The unearned kingdom is reduced to ash. The golden child is neutralized. But the ecosystem of a toxic family is a starving organism. When the son fails to secure nourishment, the parents must take desperate measures to survive. David and Susan are sitting in their empty mansion awaiting the final eviction mandate from the county sheriff. Their legal maneuvers failed. Their social smear campaigns backfired. They realize they are out of time and out of leverage. Desperation erodes their final boundaries. They realize they cannot trick me into signing a document, and they cannot extort me for cash. They decide to bypass my consent entirely. They look at the remaining paperwork in their filing cabinet and realize they still possess the ultimate key to my financial identity. The conflict shifts from emotional manipulation to a severe federal crime. The news of the catastrophic encounter on the downtown sidewalk reaches the affluent suburbs before the sun sets. Liam returns to the sprawling Oak Brook property. He does not strut through the front door with his usual arrogance. He shuffles into the foyer a defeated ghost. He informs his parents that the wedding is canceled, his fiancée abandoned him, and his corporate future in Chicago is permanently erased. The audio recording sealed his fate. David and Susan look at their golden child and realize their final proxy failed to secure a ransom. The ecosystem of their toxic family structure is officially out of viable hosts. The physical reality of their failure surrounds them. The mansion is a hollow shell. The imported rugs and designer furniture are gone, sold to temporary liquidators for a fraction of their value. Cardboard moving boxes line the marble hallways. The bank foreclosure is no longer a looming threat. It is a finalized judicial decree. The county sheriff is scheduled to arrive in a matter of days to enforce the eviction mandate and change the locks. David sits at the kitchen island staring at the foreclosure document. The silence in the house is deafening. Every legitimate avenue is closed. The emergency conservatorship petition imploded in the hospital lobby. The social smear campaign within the country club collapsed under the weight of time-stamped evidence. The extortion attempt orchestrated by their son resulted in his professional exile. They are out of time and they are out of leverage. When cornered predators exhaust their manipulative tactics, they do not suddenly develop a moral compass. They do not accept defeat and ask for forgiveness. The prospect of losing their social status and moving into a low-income rental terrifies them more than any legal consequence. Desperation erodes the final boundaries of their conscience. They realize they cannot trick me into signing a quitclaim deed. They realize they cannot hack into the secure commercial real estate trust Clara established. They decide to bypass my consent entirely. They pivot from emotional manipulation into the realm of a severe federal crime. To comprehend how my parents orchestrate this betrayal, you must understand the administrative control Susan wielded during my childhood. In the hallway of our home, Susan kept a heavy gray metal filing cabinet. It was always locked. Inside that cabinet, she hoarded the foundational documents of our lives. She kept birth certificates, old tax returns, and medical records organized in neat manila folders. I managed to secure my physical documents when I moved into my first apartment, but Susan possessed a terrifying psychological trait. She retained a photographic memory for administrative data. When I was 16, I applied for a summer job at a local grocery store. Susan stood over my shoulder while I filled out the employment forms. She memorized my 9-digit social security number in a single glance. She knew the answers to every standard banking security question. She knew the street I grew up on. She knew the make and model of my first car. She knew her own maiden name, which banks frequently use as a primary verification tool. For years, that information remained dormant in her mind. Now, sitting in the echoing kitchen of a foreclosed mansion, she weaponizes her memory. David opens his laptop. The blue light from the screen illuminates their tired, desperate faces. They know my current financial standing is flawless. Since the commercial real estate portfolio vested and my corporate accounting salary stabilized, my credit rating climbed into the highest possible percentile. I possess an immaculate financial profile. David and Susan intend to hijack that pristine score. They plan to use my identity to secure the cash required to halt the impending eviction. Susan recites my social security number from memory. David types the digits into the application fields. They do not target small retail accounts. They aim for staggering sums of unverified capital. They navigate to the website of a major national bank and initiate an application for a substantial, unsecured personal loan. They enter my name, my date of birth, and the stolen security credentials. They falsify the contact information routing the email confirmations to an anonymous account they created minutes prior. They do not stop with the personal loan. David opens new browser tabs and applies for 3 premium-tier credit cards. These specific cards offer exorbitant spending limits and cash advance options. The strategy is predatory and efficient. They intend to route the approved funds from the loan and the credit cards directly into a hidden offshore account. They plan to withdraw the cash, pay off the mortgage arrears, and leave me holding the bag for tens of thousands of dollars in fraudulent debt. The betrayal is profound. Identity theft committed by a stranger is a random crime of opportunity. Identity theft committed by the people who raised you is an intimate violation. They are using the very identity they gave me to destroy my future. They understand the collateral damage of their actions. They know I am a licensed financial auditor. My profession requires strict adherence to ethical guidelines and rigorous background checks. The Illinois Board of Examiners mandates that all certified auditors maintain a stable financial record. A sudden, unexplained default on massive loans triggers an automatic ethics review. If these fraudulent applications are approved, the unpaid debt will eventually surface on my credit report. The collection agencies will notify the state board. My accounting firm will be forced to suspend my employment pending a federal investigation. My clients will abandon me to protect their own ledgers. The career I spent years building through grueling double shifts will detonate. David and Susan know this. They are willing to paralyze my professional life and drag my name through a humiliating regulatory audit just to buy themselves a few more months in a house they do not own. They view my identity not as a person, but as a natural resource they are entitled to extract. The ghost of the daughter they abandoned in the intensive care unit is now the only lifeline they have left. David reviews the final application screen for the unsecured personal loan. He checks the routing numbers for their hidden account. He glances at Susan. She gives him a silent nod. He presses the enter key. The digital packet leaves the laptop. It travels through the encrypted networks of the internet, heading straight for the automated underwriting servers of the National Bank. David repeats the process for the premium credit cards. He clicks submit 3 consecutive times. The fraudulent requests enter the financial ether. David closes the laptop. He leans back in his chair, letting out a long breath. Susan stares at the dark screen, a twisted sense of relief washing over her features. They believe they just executed a flawless heist. They assume the banking algorithms will see my immaculate credit score and approve the funds within 48 hours. They think they outsmarted the system and secured their survival. They do not realize they just walked into a silent trap. When I established my secure perimeter, I did not merely change my passwords and block their phone numbers. I anticipated their desperation. I knew the extent of the information Susan held in her memory. I understood that cornered predators eventually cross the line into criminality. I partnered with my estate fiduciary to weave an invisible net around my financial identity. The fraudulent applications are currently processing through the banking servers, but they are about to trigger an alarm designed to catch the thieves in the act. The final confrontation shifts from a family dispute into the harsh, unforgiving light of the federal justice system. The digital packets containing my stolen identity travel through the banking network for exactly 9 minutes. I am sitting in the living room of my Lincoln Park townhouse, reviewing a quarterly tax projection for a corporate client. The fireplace provides a steady warmth against the chill of the Chicago evening. My smartphone rests on the teak desk. It does not ring with a standard phone call. It emits a sharp, distinct dual tone. This specific chime is reserved for a single application on my device. When I finalized the takeover of the commercial real estate portfolio, Mr. Mitchell advised me to retain an elite financial protection agency. This firm does not merely monitor credit scores. They place a digital perimeter around my social security number, utilizing proprietary algorithms to intercept unauthorized inquiries before they clear the automated underwriting systems. I pick up the phone and unlock the secure dashboard. The screen displays 3 bright red alerts. The details populate in real time. A national bank just registered an inquiry for a substantial unsecured personal loan. A fraction of a second later, 2 separate premium credit card applications triggered secondary alerts. The requests are flagged as pending. The system requires my biometric verification to proceed. I stare at the data. Identity theft, perpetrated by a nameless hacker in a foreign country, is a random hazard of the modern age. Identity theft orchestrated by the people who raised you is a calculated, intimate betrayal. David and Susan are currently sitting in the hollow shell of the Oak Brook mansion, believing they just outsmarted the financial sector. They assume the funds will deposit into their hidden accounts by dawn, allowing them to halt their impending eviction. They view my pristine credit rating as a resource they possess the inherent right to harvest. I do not feel a surge of panic. The early years of my life trained me to operate in high-stress environments. When Susan used to misplace her keys and tear the house apart in a frantic rage, I learned to stand perfectly still and observe. I apply that same clinical observation to the screen in front of me. I press my thumb against the biometric scanner on the application. A menu appears offering a choice to authorize or decline the inquiries. I select the option to initiate a universal freeze. The command transmits instantly to the 3 major credit bureaus. The digital doors slam shut. The banking algorithms on the other end of the transaction encounter an impenetrable wall. The loan processing halts mid-cycle. The premium card applications are automatically diverted to a rejection queue. No funds will be disbursed. Not a single dollar leaves the vault. The trap I laid months ago snaps shut, trapping the predators inside. I close the laptop and grab my coat. The digital freeze is only a temporary shield. I need an offensive strike. I leave the townhouse and hail a private car heading straight into the financial district. The night air is sharp and unforgiving. The car navigates the glowing streets of the Loop, pulling up to the glassy high-rise where my corporate litigator operates. Marcus is working late reviewing contracts in his corner office. The room is sparse, functional, and intimidating. He sits behind a polished granite desk, projecting an aura of surgical efficiency. I walk in and place my phone on his desk. I pull up the alert logs and explain the sequence of events. Marcus does not offer empty sympathies. He turns to his computer monitor and accesses a specialized forensic tracing program utilized by his firm. He inputs the digital footprints captured by the Financial Protection Agency. Every online application leaves a trail. The Internet Protocol, addresses logged by the banks, act as breadcrumbs. Marcus types a series of commands tracing the routing data back through the service providers. He executes a geographic mapping function. A map of the Illinois suburbs appears on his screen. A red marker drops onto a specific street in Oak Brook. The coordinates align perfectly with the residential internet router registered to my parents. The physical origin of the crime is undeniable. Marcus leans back in his leather chair. He steeples his fingers and looks at me. He explains the gravity of the situation. We hold irrefutable proof of a federal crime. He informs me that we stand at a crossroads. We can maintain the credit freeze and treat the incident as a successfully blocked intrusion. This option requires no public exposure and keeps the family conflict contained. The alternative is escalation. Escalation means treating David and Susan not as misguided relatives, but as hostile criminal actors attempting wire fraud. The silence in the office stretches. I look at the red marker on the computer screen. Society conditions children to protect their parents regardless of the cost. The cultural narrative dictates that biological loyalty supersedes personal safety. We are taught to absorb the damage, to keep the family unit intact. The ghost of the girl who used to seek their approval whispers in my ear. It tells me that sending my own mother and father into the federal justice system is an unforgivable sin. It argues that their desperation excuses their actions. I close my eyes and confront the ghost. I remember the vast empty space in the third row of the university auditorium. I remember the searing pain of sepsis tearing through my abdomen while they sipped cocktails on a sunlit patio. I remember Liam stalking me on a city sidewalk, attempting to extort me for wedding funds they encouraged him to demand. I remember the decades of being treated as an invisible utility player, expected to clean up their financial wreckage while receiving nothing but disdain. They never protected me. They only harvested me. If I allow this identity theft to go unpunished, they will interpret my mercy as a weakness to exploit. They will wait for my guard to drop and they will try again. A parasite does not stop feeding until the host is dead. I open my eyes. The ghost vanishes. I look at Marcus and deliver my decision. I instruct him to prepare the most severe legal response his firm can manufacture. I authorize him to escalate the conflict to the highest judicial tier. Marcus nods once. He prints the forensic data sheets and places them into a pristine manila folder. He hands the folder across the desk. He tells me the civil injunctions are his territory, but the criminal charges require my physical testimony. I take the folder and walk out of the high-rise. I drive my vehicle toward the Chicago Police Department headquarters located in a brutalist concrete structure near the city center. The precinct smells of stale coffee floor wax and damp uniforms. I approach the front desk. A desk sergeant looks up from his terminal. I inform him I am here to file a formal felony report for identity theft and attempted wire fraud. He asks for the names of the suspects. I do not hesitate. I state the full legal names of my mother and father. The sergeant pauses. Law enforcement professionals witness the dark side of humanity daily, but a child turning in their parents always causes a brief moment of hesitation. He directs me to an interview room down a narrow hallway. A detective from the Financial Crimes Division enters the room. He reviews the documents Marcus provided. The paper trail is flawless. The forensic data maps the fraud directly to the Oak Brook mansion. I answer his procedural questions with clinical detachment. I explain how Susan obtained my social security number from a locked filing cabinet during my childhood. The detective types my statement into a system. He prints an official incident report and slides it across the metal table. He hands me a pen. Signing the document severs the final psychological tether, binding me to the Foster family. I press the ink to the paper. I am no longer a victim waiting for the next betrayal. I am the architect of my own defense. The detective provides me with an official case number card. I leave the precinct and step back into the freezing Chicago night. The federal justice system is now activated. The gears of accountability begin to turn. While David and Susan pack their cardboard boxes awaiting their eviction, they remain oblivious to the avalanche preparing to crush them. They think they are battling a daughter. They do not realize they are about to face the uncompromising power of the law. The process server is already receiving the dispatch orders, and the final execution of their unearned empire is hours away. I return to the high-rise office holding the yellow card provided by the detective. The fluorescent lights of the corridor hum overhead. I step through the glass doors and find Marcus waiting at his granite desk. I place the official police report down on the polished stone surface. The criminal machinery is formally engaged. It is time to merge the impending federal reality with a crushing civil ultimatum. Marcus spends the next hour drafting a notification of intent to pursue felony charges. The resulting document is a masterpiece of legal intimidation. He does not rely on emotional appeals or subjective grievances. He utilizes the cold, unyielding language of the law. He cites specific sections of Title 18 of the United States Code regarding identity theft and wire fraud. He outlines the exact, mandatory minimum prison sentences associated with each violation. He explains how the transmission of fraudulent loan applications over the Internet constitutes a federal offense punishable by severe incarceration. The paragraphs are rigid and unforgiving. He includes a strict no-contact directive shielding me from any future harassment or digital stalking. The document clearly states that law enforcement already possesses the forensic internet protocols tracing the fraudulent applications directly to their residential router. Susan thought her photographic memory was a brilliant tool for theft. Marcus turns it into the primary evidence of her premeditated guilt. Marcus places the printed pages into 2 thick manila envelopes. He refuses to rely on standard postal delivery for a matter of this magnitude. He summons a licensed private process server to the office. The man who arrives is a retired police investigator possessing a calm, authoritative demeanor. Marcus hands him the envelopes and provides the Oak Brook address. We coordinate the delivery to align flawlessly with the public record of the foreclosure docket. The timing must be exact to ensure maximum psychological devastation. We want the legal strike to land precisely when their physical world is collapsing. The Illinois winter afternoon is bleak. The sky turns the color of bruised iron, and the bitter wind cuts across the manicured lawns of the affluent subdivision. The scene unfolding at the former Foster residence is a portrait of total systemic failure. A county sheriff cruiser sits parked in the driveway. The flashing lights reflect off the pristine brick facade, illuminating the final hours of a ruined dynasty. The armed officers are present to enforce the judicial eviction mandate, ensuring the property is vacated before the bank agents arrive to change the locks. The presence of law enforcement adds a layer of undeniable shame to the proceedings. David and Susan are not moving out on their own terms. They lack the funds to hire a professional relocation service. They are reduced to carrying cheap cardboard boxes secured with flimsy packing tape. The designer luggage they paraded through luxury resorts is gone. The expensive vehicles they financed to project an aura of success are repossessed. They load their remaining seasonal clothing and basic necessities into the back of a rented moving van. Every trip from the front door to the truck exposes their downfall. The neighbors they spent decades trying to impress are watching from behind drawn curtains. The people Susan hosted at charity luncheons now witness the spectacular public collapse of the local matriarch. Her worst nightmare is playing out in the freezing cold. She is losing her status in front of the very audience she sacrificed her children to impress. The whispered judgments she once aimed at others are now directed entirely at her. The process server parks his unmarked sedan across the street. He watches the eviction process unfold with professional detachment. He waits for the precise moment of vulnerability. He steps out of his vehicle and walks up the frozen driveway. The snow crunches loudly beneath his heavy boots. He approaches the moving van where David and Susan are struggling to lift a heavy box of kitchen supplies. He calls out their names. David turns around, wiping sweat from his forehead. His face is drawn tight with exhaustion and humiliation. His tailored suits are replaced by stained sweatpants and a faded winter jacket. He looks at the approaching man and assumes he is a bank representative arriving to document the property condition. He confirms his identity with a tired sigh. Susan steps out from behind the van, shivering in the bitter wind. The process server reaches into his heavy coat and retrieves the two thick envelopes. He hands one to David and one to Susan. He states clearly that they are officially served. He takes a step back, raises a small digital camera, and captures a time-stamped photograph of them holding the legal parcels. He turns and walks down the driveway, leaving them standing on the icy concrete. David rips open the flap of the envelope. He pulls out the heavy legal stationery bearing the letterhead of the elite corporate defense firm. He reads the bold header, "Notification of intent to pursue felony charges." His eyes scan down the page. He sees the official police report number printed in stark black ink. He reads the federal statutes detailing the penalties for wire fraud. The remaining shreds of his arrogance evaporate into the freezing air. David realizes the severity of his actions. He assumed identity theft within a family was a minor domestic dispute that could be resolved with a forced apology or a tearful negotiation. He never anticipated a daughter willing to invite federal prosecutors into the living room. He looks at the words federal prison and the color drains from his face. His knees buckle slightly. He leans against the cold metal of the rented moving van to steady his trembling frame. Susan looks over his shoulder. She reads the same terrifying paragraphs. She drops the cardboard box she is holding. It hits the driveway and splits open, spilling winter scarves and old sweaters across the dirty snow. The pristine image she spent a lifetime constructing is reduced to a pile of scattered debris. She realizes she is no longer facing a mere social exile or a temporary financial setback. She is looking at the very real prospect of a criminal indictment. The illusion of safety she chased her entire life is permanently shattered. They stand together in the freezing driveway, paralyzed by the gravity of their situation. They have no home to return to. They have zero funds in their bank accounts. Their social circle abandoned them. Their golden child is exiled and jobless. And now the justice system is preparing to drag them into a federal courtroom. They look at the legal documents and understand they are entirely outmaneuvered. The quiet daughter they treated like a disposable utility just locked them in a legal cage they can never escape. They spent 20 years trying to bury my independence and extract my resources. They assumed I would always absorb the damage to keep the family unit intact. Instead, I built a fortress and watched them dismantle their own lives with their own reckless choices. I sit in the warmth of my Lincoln Park townhouse when my smartphone vibrates. I receive a secure encrypted message from Marcus. It contains the time-stamped photograph captured by the process server. I see my parents standing by the moving van holding the envelopes. I look at their defeated postures and the scattered debris at their feet. The visual contrast between my secure sanctuary and their frozen exile is profound. I do not feel pity. I do not feel sorrow. I feel the equilibrium of justice. The universe always balances its ledger. The destruction of their narcissistic empire is total and irreversible. They gambled their future on the belief that biological ties grant immunity from accountability. They lost everything. The architects of my misery are ruined. The threat they posed is permanently neutralized. The legal shield surrounding my life is impenetrable. But survival is only the first phase of the journey. The generational wealth I inherited must be repurposed. If I simply hoard the commercial real estate revenue, I risk becoming another cold branch on a toxic family tree. I must ensure the cycle of trauma ends with me. I look out the window at the glowing Chicago skyline. The demolition phase is finished, and the reconstruction of my legacy is about to begin. 2 years have passed since the process server walked up that frozen driveway. I stand by the floor-to-ceiling windows of my Lincoln Park townhouse, watching the morning sun reflect off the Chicago River. The temperature outside is bitter cold, but the radiant heating beneath the oak floorboards keeps the environment warm and secure. The silence in my home is intentional. It is the sound of a life swept clean of toxic debris. 30 miles away on the industrial outskirts of the city, the reality of the federal justice system is grinding my parents down to the bone. David and Susan rent a dilapidated one-bedroom apartment above a noisy commercial laundromat. The walls are paper-thin and the winter drafts seep through the poorly sealed windows. They spend their days reviewing complex legal discovery packets with an overworked public defender. The federal courts move at a glacial pace, but the destination is inevitable. They surrendered their passports. They are barred from opening new lines of credit. The affluent society they spent decades cultivating treats them like ghosts. They wait for their trial dates trapped in a suffocating isolation of their own making. The unearned kingdom of my brother met an equally harsh fate. Liam lost the luxury condominium and the designer wardrobe. He currently works the overnight shift at a logistics warehouse near the interstate. He spends 10 hours a day loading heavy freight onto shipping pallets to slowly chip away at his staggering consumer debt. The physical labor is grueling. His hands are calloused, and his posture is permanently stooped from exhaustion. The golden child who once drove financed sports cars and demanded $50,000 ransoms now clocks in and out of a concrete facility under fluorescent lights. He has no trust fund to raid. He has no parents to bail him out. The universe balanced the ledger. The commercial real estate portfolio Clara left me continues to thrive. The corporate leases generate a substantial surplus every quarter. My fiduciary, Mr. Mitchell, advised me to funnel the excess capital into private equity markets to maximize my personal net worth. I declined the advice. Hoarding wealth simply to watch a bank balance grow is the exact trap that destroyed my family. They worshipped status and ignored humanity. I intend to use the capital as a scalpel to sever the cycle of generational trauma. I schedule a meeting with the board of directors at a prominent Illinois university. I sit across a polished mahogany table from the dean of admissions and 3 senior financial officers. I present a bound proposal detailing a permanent academic endowment funded entirely by the commercial property yields. The dean flips through the pages and his eyes light up at the financial figures. He immediately suggests diverting the funds into the General Athletic Scholarship Pool to boost university enrollment and increase marketing visibility. I lean across the table and shut down his pitch. I explain the exact criteria of my covenant. The grant is not for athletes or legacy students. The funds are strictly reserved for students who are legally emancipated or can prove they receive zero financial contribution from their biological parents due to domestic or financial abuse. One administrator shifts in his leather chair complaining that the parameters are too restrictive and difficult to verify. I look him dead in the eye. I tell him he has exactly 10 seconds to accept the terms as written, or I will walk out the door and hand the endowment to a rival institution. The dean recognizes the finality in my voice. He picks up a pen and signs the binding agreement. We launch the Independence Grant the following semester. I mandate my presence on the final selection panel. Late one Tuesday afternoon, I sit in a small campus office reviewing the final candidate file. A 19-year-old girl named Maya walks through the door. She wears a thin jacket unsuited for the Illinois winter. Her boots are scuffed and she clutches a worn canvas backpack against her chest. She sits down projecting a tough defensive exterior, anticipating a rejection. I read her file. Maya maintains a perfect grade point average while working the graveyard shift at a local diner. Her parents kicked her out of their house because she refused to hand over her tip money to cover their reckless gambling debts. She is currently sleeping in the back seat of her car, parking under streetlights so she can read her biology textbooks. The university administrators begin asking standard questions about her career goals. Maya answers in short clipped sentences, trying to hide her profound exhaustion. I raise my hand to silence the administrators. I look directly at Maya. I ask her how many hours of sleep she managed to get the previous night. She blinks, surprised by the deviation from the script. She looks at the floor and admits she slept for 3 hours, because the diner was short-staffed. I reach into my leather portfolio. I pull out a heavy cream-colored envelope and slide it across the desk. I tell her to open it. Her trembling fingers break the seal. She unfolds the official award letter. The document guarantees full tuition coverage for 4 years. It includes a comprehensive allowance for textbooks and provides a monthly housing stipend, allowing her to rent a warm, secure apartment near the campus. Maya stares at the numbers printed on the page. The tough defensive exterior shatters. She drops the paper onto the table and covers her face with her hands. Her shoulders shake as years of accumulated survival stress finally release. I walk around the table and place my hand on her shoulder. I tell her she is safe. I tell her the grueling war she has been fighting is officially over. Standing in that small campus office, I realize the true power of walking away. I did not just survive my toxic lineage, I replaced it. I built a fortress and weaponized my success to protect the vulnerable. The story of my family is a testament to a harsh but necessary truth. Biological relation does not obligate you to endure abuse. A shared last name is not a binding contract to finance the delusions of a narcissist. People who view you as a disposable utility will drain your energy, your youth, and your bank accounts until there is nothing left but ash. You have the right to curate your own peace. You have the right to build an impenetrable perimeter around your life. Do not set yourself on fire to keep an abusive family warm. The guilt will try to pull you back, and society will attempt to shame you for choosing your own survival. Ignore the noise. Peace is often found on the other side of a very difficult goodbye. If you are sitting at a dinner table where your boundaries are treated as insults, I want you to ask yourself a hard question. Are you staying because you feel genuine love, or are you staying because you fear the quiet that comes after you walk out the door? Drop your answer in the comments below. Let me know exactly how you would handle a family that measured your worth in dollar signs. Hit the subscribe button if you found any piece of your own truth in this narrative. Stay strong, guard your peace, and I will see you in the next story from Senior Echo Stories.